Hey everyone, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage. And behind me, I have the 2025 Honda Grom. This is the 4th generation model in their Honda Grom lineup. And it is very similar to the 3rd generation Grom that we first saw in 2022. And for that reason, a lot of these parts are interchangeable. But as you can see on the table in front of me, we have just a quick look at some of the products that we offer for the 2025 Honda Grom. So in this video, we'll be showing you the installation of our Elite 1 low mount Fender Eliminator. Now, our Elite 1 Fender Eliminator does consist of our undertail closeout that is texture and color matched, and seamless installation to close off the hole left behind from your OEM Fender. You also have the option of choosing a high mount or low mount bracket, and if you go with a low mount bracket, we have provided these pilot holes that show you where you could drill the holes to mount the bracket to the undertail closeout. You also have the ability in the center to drill a pilot hole for use of a license plate light. Now, this installation process is exactly the same as found on the 3rd generation Grom. So at this time, we will cut to that footage showing the installation process.
We will begin by removing the seat here. And then we will remove the license plate off the stock setup here. We will reuse whatever hardware came with your Grom to reattach the license plate to the new setup. If for some odd reason you don't have any of this hardware, there are sets available for purchase from our website, tstindustries.com. We have these reflective sets, and then we also have these really nice countersunk anodized aluminum washers coupled with stainless hardware that also looks really good on this setup. Now, I have a quick note to make here. We are about to remove the entire fender. That means we are removing the signals and the license plate light. Something will have to be done about retaining signaling functions, and for those guys who want to run a license plate light, in our store it's pretty much split 50-50, some do, some don't. For those of you guys that do want to run a license plate light, we do have one available for purchase. It is a separate unit. We don't shove this down everybody's throat. Those who want to purchase it do. The ones that don't, obviously, freedom is choice, so the choice is yours. Now here you see our integrated taillight already mounted here. We are actually using the signals within this capsule. That is also an option that you can use for retaining signaling functions on your bike. We also sell pod signals of different kinds. We have several different choices. This is just an example. It's our BL6 lamp. This comes in smoked or clear. We have mounting kits that attach these signals to the license plate bracket. The wiring for this unit would have to come from the removal of this sub-harness from the removed fender. The actual taillight comes with a self-contained harness that plugs all of the functions in. None of our components require splicing. Really, this is all plug-and-play stuff. Just wanted to mention that before we begin. At this point, we will need to find the electrical connection from the Fender equipment to the bike. It is contained on the left side of the bike. The connector is in a boot, and it looks like this. 4 conductors, yellow, blue, orange, and green wires leading into it. We need to take the boot off, and there is an unlock feature here. Press it down, pull them apart, and now this will be able to be routed back through to the underneath. We first have to drop the fender. These 4 10mm head fasteners will need to come out. I'm using a 10mm socket for that purpose. Once I get to the last one, I will need to support the fender from the bottom. Now that the fender's loose, we also have the whole undertail loose. If we slowly start pulling back on the fender, we'll notice that the routing of this particular wire to all the fender electricals is through and under the left frame rail. So we will have to get it around, make sure it doesn't snag on anything, forward it to the hole that goes through the subtray. Fairly straightforward. This all comes off. If you are running an integrated taillight, our integrated taillight will just plug right into here for the signal connection. If you are going to be using any other type of signals, like some of our pod signals, maybe some other brand signals, this sub harness will need to be taken out. So for that purpose, we will remove this 10mm head fastener. And then we have 4 Phillips head fasteners here. We have a tab coming off this lower shroud that interfaces with the steel part here. This entire shroud needs to be cleared from that tab. Could potentially just pop it off on the bottom and pull it in this direction. Once we gain access in here, the rest is pretty simple. This harness here forwards one plug down here to the license plate light. We simply just pull that out. We'll grab pliers for that purpose. There is a metal tab that just bends down and holds this harness down. All we have to do is pry it up and that clears the harness. If we slip this boot off, we gain entry right into where all the connectors are for the signaling equipment. These are bullet connectors, pretty simple, self-explanatory. Just disconnect them like so, and now our harness is free. Again, I was explaining before, I'm just going to reiterate really quickly. If you are not using external signals, this is redundant, skip these steps. If you are, then you will need to see this. We'll likely shoot a separate video showing the installation of the various different types of signals we have on the rear of this bike. This will actually include the connection of this harness. Here we have just same signal connectors as the connectors that are outfitted on our TST Industries pod signals. So the connection will actually be very, very easy. All right, since this is not part of the Fender Eliminator module, we'll put this away and get back to this topic in the appropriate video. For now, we will go back to the table and pre-configure the appropriate Fender Eliminator for this video, and then I will show you how to install it on this bike. Let's now pre-assemble our components into this assembly so that we can be successful at just transferring it onto the bike. I'm going to keep this on the table for our reference. These components show up to your doorstep in pieces with the hardware in a baggie. Let's empty the contents and identify what goes where. This bracket will attach to this undertail via the only M6 coarser screws that are included in here, along with 4 of these small washers. And that will be capped off by 2 6mm lock nuts. These are the larger nuts. These are the larger diameter screws. We also have 2 self-threading thermoplastic screws that will thread into these bosses here. That will be coupled up with 2 washers. And then the rearmost connection will be made via these long M5 screws, 2 washers, and these flange nuts. It's fairly simple to identify. All of these components differ. For now, we will be working on pre-assembling these components onto here, and this is the installation hardware onto the bike. As you can see, we only have 2 holes here. For this variant of our kit, we will need to drill 2 holes for the mounting of this bracket. But cool thing about this component is that in the middle of the mounting bosses that are reinforced by gussets, we actually provided a hole center that will guide you in starting and drilling your holes. So there is a little tiny circle that when you use an appropriate size drill bit, It will actually center the drill bit for you and enable you to step drill up to the appropriate size without walking all over the place. So you don't need to mark or measure anything. You just follow our guidelines with the appropriate size drill. Good to go. Now, if you have opted to use a license plate light, then you will need to drill a third hole through here. Same steps. I will show you how to do it. I will assume that you guys did opt for the license plate light. If you did not, just forgo the step of drilling this hole and the steps of the installation I'm going to show later of routing the license plate light and connecting it. All right. Let's start by selecting the appropriate drill size. I like to start with a 3/32 drill. For guys that use metric, that'll be roughly equivalent to 2.5 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and drill right through that center. Make sure that you don't have any body part on the back side of where that drill is going to exit. Now, we are step drilling for the purpose of keeping our holes center. So the next size up I'm going to go to is 5/32. You can technically go all the way up to the last size I'm going to show you, but I do like to step drill. It really is a higher precision method for drilling. Now with the 5/32, the metric equivalent, closest metric equivalent, will be 4 millimeters. You can choose to clean up these holes or not. This is not the last size we're going to go for, but the center hole, passing the license plate wire, if you are using the TST Industries license plate light, the 5/32 will be your final hole size for that center. You don't want to make this too big because you don't want water and debris entering up there. So center hole will be done at this size. We will once again switch to another drill size. We'll go to 15/64, which is very close to 6 millimeters. If you don't have a large selection of drill bits, 1/4 inch will work here too. And remember, with this largest drill, we're only drilling out the outside holes and not the middle. Now, it's very likely that you will end up with some burrs on these holes. The bracket does clamp down on these connections. You could possibly just clamp them down if you don't want to clean them up. I do like to clean them up. I have a countersink tool that I use for cleaning this up. I understand that some of you guys may not have these tools, so I will show you an alternate method. You could take a utility knife and just pass it around the edge, and that will take your burrs off. Produces acceptable results. Cleans it up really nicely. It won't produce any bulk between the mounting pad of our Fender Eliminator bracket and this undertail. The outside should be cleaned up. The inside is really a non-issue. It's a non-cosmetic side, and we don't have such a buildup. So, should be good to go there. All right, let's stack up some hardware here. Get this bracket mounted. This may be a little confusing, so I'm going to be very detailed on the explanation here. The wide holes, the wide slots, widely placed slots, are for the license plate. You have these pads that correspond to the holes we just drilled. So you see how this goes up against this surface, and you have to make sure that on the bike you want the undertail to be sort of in this position, and your license plate will be hanging this way. So if you got confused and mounted the license plate bracket upside down, you will notice that you have a diverging angle between this surface and this surface. That is wrong. What you want is kind of a sloping angle here. All right, it's very simple. 4 of the same washers, so we will stack them on the screws get the screw in through here into the smaller slot. Do the same on the other side. And that will now nicely pass through the holes we drilled. Flip it over, stack washers on each one of the screws, cap it off with a nut. These nuts will not go all the way to bottom out because they do have a nylock locking element in them. We will have to apply tools here. There is adjustability here because this bracket is slotted. It is meant for fine tuning. So my easiest method of centering this guy on the undertail is to look at the vertex of the inner triangle here and line it up with the hole I've made. Now, that only works for those installations where we're using a license plate light and we've made that hole. Otherwise, you could possibly put a little piece of painter's tape on here, measure from side to side and make a center, or just go by eye. Either way, we will need to tighten down on these connections just a little bit so that we can actually retain this in place and doesn't move on us while we try to lock it down. 4mm Allen from the outside and 10mm hex from the underside. Now, since we are going to adjust where this thing sits side to side, I want to make sure that we don't bottom it out all the way. We preserve some adjustability. All right. Once again, I'm going to center it, and now I'm going to go to full lock with these bolted connections. You don't need to exert too much force on these bolted connections because they do have a locking element in the nuts. You also don't want to strain the plastic that you're clamping in between all of this hardware. We did build in ribs and gussets here that reinforce those connecting areas, but if you exert too much force, then you will inevitably stress that area, and down the line, you'll probably have problems with this thing cracking on you. So go to the bottom, tighten it up just a little bit, just a touch, and that will exert enough friction on this connection, and this thing won't move on you. Now, we are installing a license plate light, so I will route it at this point. We will want it to sit on the outside here and get clamped by the license plate itself. So we will go through this center triangle and try to go right through that hole that we drilled for access of the wire straight to the top side of the undertail. And in consequence, we will get this kind of a setup. Then grab this pre-assembly along with all the mounting hardware that attaches it to the bike, hop on over to the bike, and let's finish up. Now, working from the underside of the bike, we will pass the wire for the license plate light up through to the top, line up our assembly here in the void. All right, so for this next sequence, you could choose to do the rear screws first, but then you will have to route this across the top. What I'm gonna do is leave a little bit of gap here, engage my rearmost screws. So I'm gonna use the long countersunk screws through the bottom. Washer, flange nut on the top. These have enough length so that I can get a good bite on the threads and still have adjustability up and down for routing that wire. Once you engage one, system is self-captive. All right, so typically I like to get this connected closer to this connector here that has the actual OEM connection for the license plate light. If you've actually retained the OEM sub-harness from the Fender for the purpose of running external signals, your connection could be made over here or anywhere to the green and yellow wire. Now, if you are connecting to green and yellow, the green is the negative, so black from our license plate light will connect into this and red into yellow. Connection of our license plate light is made via these posi tap connectors. Fairly straightforward. I'll show you how to use it on here. So since I am wiring into here, I'm going to pass this license plate light wire under this frame component over to the outside under the sub tray here. This is basically how the OEM routing of the Fender lighting wiring is. So I kind of want to emulate that. I do like it to be clear of the trunk compartment, but just need to make sure that it's all nice and neat in there. If we have extra bulk, we'll have to distribute it somewhere. Now, this forward compartment here is a perfect place to get my wires S-folded. You could actually use a wire tie or something like that. The license plate light does come bundled up with a little twisty tie. You could neaten it up that way and then just shove it in between other wires that are already preloaded against another component. And then all you really want is just a little bit of this wire sticking out. Now, on our integrated tail light, we have provided pigtails for the connection of a license plate light. If you prefer to get terminals and connectors installed on these components for some kind of a sealed connector or something like that, you're free to do so. You could just undo these overlaps and then you'll have access to that. If you're just looking for a simple means of connecting, then these loops are made specifically for the purpose of being used with our system, because when installed in this configuration, our connectors remain axial, which means, or coaxial rather. All the connections are on the same axis and it's very easy to distribute the bulk. Open up the loop, get this end of your connector around it, get it fitted nicely within the loop until it looks like this. Piercing element gets screwed on. And now we have our base connection made. This connection is further made simple by having red to red, black to black. Now our license plate lights do come pre-stripped with a certain amount of wire hanging out. This is an R&D license plate light that I've been playing with here a little bit, so I'm going to strip it back down. I somehow managed to dispose of the stripped ends, but this is kind of what they look like when they come to you guys. And you basically just loosen these smaller end caps, fit your stripped end in there, make sure it bottoms out, tighten it down, give it a tiny little tug, make sure that it's really in there and captive, repeat. All right, now that we've made the connection, we need to verify that it's actually working before we move any further. We're good to go. Let's do some final bulk distribution here, making sure that these wires are actually contained. All the connectors are put away, won't be dangling around. And also make sure that nothing's getting snagged on the seat latch or anything like that. All right, we're looking good. Let's now grab the remaining fasteners for our undertail assembly. These trilobular plastite screws that go through these larger washers. They go in these locations. We'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to get these in. Remember, you are cutting a brand new thread into that undertail. You want to be careful not to over tighten it when you get to the bottom position. Do that on both sides. Just along the way, making sure none of the wires are snagged in here, nothing's causing pressure on anything. We're looking pretty good. I do have my wire running under this frame component here for my tail light, just making sure that that doesn't get snagged. Make sure you support that undertail from the bottom. You're just not stressing the other connection you just made. Get it to bottom out, tighten it up just a little bit past that, making sure all the bottom surfaces are flush. If you are extremely particular about not having gaps between the undertail and the sub tray, make sure you adjust that before you tighten it down. I'm going to use a 3mm Allen from the bottom and an 8mm socket from the top, and I will tighten down on these rear connections. Let's get them to bottom out and then give them that tiny little bit of tightness past bottom out, and then everything will be great. All right, we've come to the last step here. I know I told you guys to retain the OEM or previously used hardware for your license plate. I actually have opted for our anodized aluminum mounting kit that we do sell separately. I already have a bunch of anodized aluminum accents on this bike, so I just want to be congruent with my original intent here. I'm gonna use these guys. They are available in several different colors. We have blue, red, black, silver, gold, I think. Complete list is on our website, so if you're interested, check it out. You can see here, if you are using a license plate light, it's going to get clamped in between the license plate and its mounting bracket. Now, we do have an adhesive strip on the license plate light. I tend not to use it. Those of you guys that are worried about stuff coming off, we've included it for you, but in all my installations, in all the years I've been doing this and we've been producing this light, it's proven unnecessary. For this connection, I'm going to use a 3mm Allen and a 8mm box on the back. I'm going to leave a little bit of adjustability. Obviously, I want to center and level my setup here at the very end. I'm going to center my license plate, center my license plate light, and when I'm comfortable with where everything is, I'm going to go ahead and fully tighten on those hardware sets. Now, I've noticed a nuance with this bike. Anytime I disconnect any of the components that hold the sub tray on and inevitably flex the sub tray, these side caps that cover the accessory screw holes, they tend to come out. I have a feeling that over time people are going to be losing these things, and we'll have to come up with some kind of a solution, possibly losing them just from riding vibration. I don't know. But anytime you do any of these installations here, I recommend making sure that none of these popped off. If they did, you want to find them right away before they walk away. Seat goes back on. This installation is complete.
And just like that, you have successfully removed your OEM Fender, completely cleaned up the rear of your new Honda Grom, and best of all, with mounting options in the high mount and low mount configuration, the ability to use a license plate light and external signals, you really do have a all-in-all complete package built to exactly what you need, and you're not stuck paying for anything you don't. So if you're interested in this product, you want to find out more details, see some photos, you're just ready to buy, please be sure to visit our website, tstindustries.com. The link to this kit can be found in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you just want to drop a line and say, hey, let us know where you're watching from, please feel free to do so in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn the notification bell on to stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we've got going on. And lastly, don't forget to stop by our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all username TST Industries. For now, this has been Mark in the TST Garage, and we will catch you next time. Ride safe.